So thank you for being here, Mrs. Petraeus.
My pleasure.
You head Service Member Affairs at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Tell us what the mission of your office is.
It's actually written in the Dodd-Frank statute, which makes my job easier. I'm supposed to see that military personnel and their families get the financial education they need to make better informed consumer decisions. I'm supposed to monitor their complaints that come into the CFPB and the response to those complaints. And I'm also supposed to work with other federal and state agencies on consumer protection measures for the military. So a pretty broad set of missions that allows me to do quite a lot.
So in these roles, can you describe the biggest challenge or challenges that you face?
I think one of the biggest challenges right now, especially because we are a relatively new federal agency, we're just 2 years old, is education. And by that I mean educating service members and veterans and their families who we are and what we do, and then also working to provide that education or to see that they get that education about consumer matters that is part of my mission. So it's twofold, and that's partly why I go right now out and about so often. I've been to over 60 military installations, 28 states. I even went to the Far East, to the bases in Japan and South Korea, pretty much to educate people that we are there, and also in a way to educate myself too about what their issues are. So it's a challenge. We know a lot of people still have not heard of the CFPB or what it is or what it does, and we want them to know about us so we can help then educate them to make wiser financial decisions.
Can you give us a picture of the typical veteran's financial situation and describe some of the most common or pressing obstacles that service members face?
Well, veterans, of course, are those who have served and they're out of the military, and there's no such thing, I don't think, as a typical veteran. You know, they're all very different. They're individuals, and their finances are quite different. Ideally, what you want with a veteran is that they spend time thinking before they walk out the door of the military what they're going to do, and they have the skills to get employed and to transition seamlessly to a job in the private sector. That obviously doesn't always happen, and the Department of Defense is working on that. We help them write the curriculum for what's called their Transition Assistance Program, and we're also looking at doing a financial coaching initiative for recently transitioned veterans to help them during that what may be a kind of shaky time when they're trying to figure out, you know, what's next and how they're going to swing it financially. So obviously they're worried about employment, they're worried about their finances, and we want to try to help ease that transition when we can.
Are military members particularly susceptible to financial hardships or scams?
Interestingly, yes. I think people are very surprised sometimes to hear that military members are actually targeted by scams, but they truly are. We saw it a lot back when I worked for the Better Business Bureau that does get a lot of consumer complaints. There's some reasons for that. One is that they are a population that gets a guaranteed paycheck while they're in the service. It comes in twice a month. It's absolutely guaranteed. And if you have a large military installation, that can be a very, very big payroll. It can be one of the biggest in the state. So it's very attractive to businesses, both the legitimate kind and then the kind that are not legitimate and that are just there to scam service members. And the other thing is they're a young population by and large. For many of them, it may be their first job out of high school when they enter. Their average age, I think, is about 25. They're just not necessarily that experienced about recognizing the red flags of a bad deal. So it is sometimes very easy to target them or to target their families while they're deployed as well. Sadly, if you go on the internet and you just put in the search term military loans, you will get about 58 million results, and many of those are lending activities targeted directly at service members. Some are outright ripoffs where they're encouraged to send money in advance to get a loan, and of course the money disappears, never to be seen again. Some are just very expensive loans with annual percentage rates as high as 400%. So they are targeted, and we need to make them aware of the red flags that are out there, and certainly one of the big ones would be don't send money in advance to somebody you don't know for a product or service that they promise they will send you.
Is predatory lending, we do hear a lot about that, is that one of the biggest problems facing service members?
Yeah, it is a big issue. The military is not a profession that pays you a whole lot of money, and especially when you're at the very junior ranks, you don't get much money at all. And many of them, I think, find themselves in the position of having what we call more month than money, and then they may go looking for loans. The military services do provide emergency loans. They have military relief societies, but some young troops may not be aware of that, or they may not want to go and ask. They might be afraid they'll get in trouble, so they'll go looking on the internet or outside the gates and end up borrowing money at very, very high interest rates. One of the most outrageous I saw was an auto title loan, where you give the title of your car as security. This service member was borrowing $1,600. It was a 32-month loan, and the monthly payment was $580. So this sergeant was going to be paying $15,000 in finance charges for a $1,600 loan. Yeah, wow, indeed.
States already have consumer protection laws in place. How does the CFPB work in concert with states to protect consumers and service members?
My office is in pretty frequent contact with the attorneys general, and I will say they have done a great job of going after folks that are breaking, their particular laws. A good example was the Attorney General of Kentucky, who went after a website that was trying to generate business for a certain group of for-profit colleges. And the website was called gibill.com, and it looked like an official VA GI Bill website. And he filed suit against them and was joined by about 20 other attorneys general, and was able not only to get the company to say they would completely revamp their website, so it was obvious that they were not official VA websites, but they also had to give that URL to the VA, which I thought was wonderful. So that was a great initiative. There have been, I think, a number of efforts in the states, and I think many of the state legislatures have really looked for ways to help military and veterans in their states. Recently I went down to Florida and watched the governor there sign a bill providing enhanced penalties for those who rip off military or veterans in Florida. Not only higher penalties, but then the veterans would be first in the queue for any damages that would come. So I think there's a lot of praiseworthy efforts really going on in the states, and certainly we're very happy to provide information about what we've heard and seen as we've gone out and about and talked to military personnel, veterans, and their families. I would encourage the legislatures to be mindful of the military. One size doesn't always fit all. Some of the great state programs out there may be challenging for the military if they have requirements about owner occupancy or state residency. I was a great example, moving 24 times in 37 years. Sometimes it makes it hard, really, for state laws to apply to somebody that's kind of a transient resident, and yet they need help too. So something I would ask that the legislatures be mindful of. Think about the kind of unique nature of military life, and again, I applaud what many of them have already done.
Those are some really good examples. Are there other best practices that your office employs that state legislatures might consider?
Again, I think, military life is unique. Certainly, there are some great initiatives. The Veterans Courts are another one that we've followed with interest. I would just say, try to kind of think of the unintended consequences, or, how it might not fit. Our office, again, would be happy to talk about any military-specific issues that we might have seen. And also just to hold the line, I think quite often there are bills that have very military-friendly sounding names that maybe don't have the provisions in them that you might expect. So I would just say be mindful of the fine print and think about the long-term consequences, and if those bills will really work for the military or the veteran population.
And finally, Should the government help make college more affordable for service members and their families?
Well, I think they're already doing that. You know, the GI Bill benefit is a very generous one, the post 9/11 GI Bill, and it can be transferred by the veteran to their family, to their spouse, or their dependent child as well. So there's some great benefits out there. I think the important thing is for us to help see that they are used in the best possible way with the best outcomes for that service member. There are a lot of schools that want some of that money, and some of them, I think there's a role to be played in the states, in the accreditation agencies, the state approving agencies, to really vet those schools well and make sure that it's a good place for that service member to spend their money. And I will say many states I know sign on to the Yellow Ribbon Program, which enhances the federal GI Bill benefit, and I think that's a wonderful effort on their part. So I applaud that.
Okay, so it really sounds like the biggest challenge is educating members of the military about how to be financially savvy and to avoid some of these scams.
Yeah, it's education for them, and we work with the Department of Defense, who provides a lot of that while they're in the military. And then it's also, frankly, protecting them when there are people out there who take advantage of them. There are some great laws on the books that need to be enforced, and sometimes it is the state attorneys general who do that. So they need education, but then they also need the protection both of the existing laws, that those are enforced, and then if states can provide enhanced protections, so much the better.
Okay. Is there anything else that you think state lawmakers should know on this topic?
I would just say, as a longtime military family member and one who has been around since the Vietnam era, I'm very grateful for the level of support that is there now for our military and veteran families. They obviously, now we have an all-volunteer force. They've raised their hands to serve their country. Many of them have been deployed for years, and it's very gratifying to see what they do is being recognized in a meaningful way by folks around the country. So I'd like to express my gratitude for that, and again, my desire at my office to work with the states to do everything we can to see that our military and our veterans receive the protections that I think they've earned.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.